It's Kate.
And Oliver Hudson. Host of the new podcast, Sibling
Revelry.
That's right.
We started this show because, you know what? No one talks about siblings and that dynamic.
The siblings, they know each other better than anybody.
Yes.
You know.
Listen to Sibling Revelry on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm Jacob Goldstein. I used to host Planet Money. Now I'm starting a new show. It's called What's Your Problem? Every week on What's Your Problem, entrepreneurs and engineers describe the future they're going to build once they solve a few problems. I'm talking to people trying to figure out how to do things that no one on the planet knows how to do, from creating a drone delivery business to building a car that can truly drive itself. Listen to What's Your Problem on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Episode 290, Going Plant-Based on a Budget with Toni Okamoto.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast, where you'll learn to save money, embrace simplicity, and live a richer life. Here are your hosts, Jen and Jill.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast. My name is Jen.
My name is Jill.
And today is we have an episode that I've always wanted to do on this show, but have always been a little nervous. Yeah.
I love that reason for doing it, though. Push through the nervousness usually makes for the best episodes.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about diet, it's a very heated, topic.
Yeah.
And we are by no means a nutrition podcast. So we're not telling people how to eat. But when I was paying off $78,000 of debt with my husband, I was a vegetarian. And I noticed when meal planning and cooking that my budget essentially was much lower than that of other people I talked to. And the biggest difference was the amount of meat we were consuming.
Yeah.
And so I've always been an advocate for eating a more plant-based diet, especially while paying off debt, but just in general too, for health reasons, for sustainability reasons. But I'm not on a high horse where I think that that's the only way to do things. So I'm glad we've got Toni on to talk about it, because she does give a very kind explanation.
We're on a very much shorter horse over here. And while we're not nutritionists by any means or trying to tell people what to do with their lives, we recognize that a big portion of our income will go to buying food. And of course, there's many in our communities, including ourselves, who are interested in how to also eat well. How can we get the nutrients that our bodies need into our diets and regular routines? And how can we also be conscious of our food budget and our spending in that regard? And also just kind of sift through and weed out some of the misconceptions about various styles and types of eating. And so Toni's here in a really non-judgmental way to explain all of that to us and help make this a more approachable topic, I think.
Absolutely.
But first, this episode is brought to you by Changes.
Ow!
Turning the beat around. Whether you're deciding you don't care that much anymore if your house is clean, or you're trying a new method of wearing the same outfit all week, or you're considering a new way of eating, we're all making changes, hopefully for the better. And if you want to know about the changes some of your fellow listener friends made in order to become debt-free, then tune in to our YouTube channel. That's right. Frugal Friends are on YouTube, and you can watch some super inspirational debt-free stories, again, from fellow Frugal Friends podcast listeners calling in, talking about how they became debt-free. You get to see their faces, our faces. It's on video. It's on YouTube. Go there, subscribe, click the notification button.
It's beautiful. And nobody's going to give you the advice to not change your outfit all week. That is not a tip that anybody gave to pay off debt faster.
Changes.
Changes were
not
made, though.
Changing.
Yeah.
The change I'm making is not changing.
Yes, that is not a thing. We even made an edit of somebody giving a tip that we didn't agree with. We took it out. So all of the tips in there from our listeners are very useful, very inspiring.
Yeesh.
So definitely go search Frugal Friends on YouTube.
Do it.
And so whenever we talk about food, it's a popular topic, especially when we talk about eating healthy on a budget, because that's the thing that people don't want to give up. It's eating healthy. And when people have a certain diet they want to stick to, they are very adamant about that. So we'll get emails about like, oh, I want to be paleo, but how do I like bring my grocery budget down? And I'm like, well, you don't really. You've chosen this one thing to value. So there has to be other things that you value less and you cut those things. And so, but this is a way going plant-based, and we'll talk about kind of what that means. We are saying kind of synonymous with vegan, but really just all ingredients are plant-based versus animal-based. That's kind of how we're referring to that. But this is a very affordable way to, of all the diets on the market, this is a very affordable one. We are huge advocates for incorporating whole foods into your diet. It is definitely the best like way to save money on being healthy.
Yeah.
And so we're going to just dive into kind of what makes a plant-based diet expensive, what makes it affordable, and even how you can customize it if maybe your whole household doesn't agree with what you found.
So much to get into.
Yeah.
And if this concept of eating healthy on a budget is intriguing to you, you can queue up some other episodes. Episode 182, Eat Healthier, More Affordably and Easier with Cassie Joy Garcia. That was an awesome episode. Episode 147, How to Eat Healthy on a Budget. Those are just to name a few. We've got plenty about just food in general.
Amen.
And this one too from Toni.
Yes. And we're so happy to have Toni as an expert in this. I know we talk about it a lot on our own. But Toni, she's the founder of Plant-Based on a Budget. So this is her whole thing, is talking about how to go plant-based affordably. It's a popular website and meal plan that shows you how to save money by eating veggies. And she's also the author of Plant-Based on a Budget and the co-host of the Plant-Powered People podcast. Oh, you know we love a good alliteration.
Changes.
And her new cookbook is called Plant-Based on a Budget, Quick and Easy. So we're covering the gamut. Toni is literally the best person to talk about this with. So
Here she is. She's a gem.
Toni, thank you so much for joining us on the Frugal Friends podcast. This is going to be a really fun episode, I think.
Yes. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. I love saving money. And so your podcast is like my jam.
Yes.
We love to hear that from our guests.
We love jams.
Butter us up. Definitely. Jam us up.
Yes.
All right. So you are an expert on going plant-based on a budget. So our first question for you is, what's the biggest misconception about going plant-based?
The biggest misconception about going plant-based for me, and from what I hear often, is that people believe it has to happen overnight and it has to be all or nothing. And for me, it took 6 years to become plant-based. I gradually and very slowly moved away from the foods that I was very familiar with and very comfortable eating. And I still feel as plant-based as the next person. It just took me a little bit longer. And I also made sure that I set myself up for success long term. And I know that doing something before you're completely comfortable can set you up for failure. You can think, oh, well, I messed up, tried it, didn't work for me, instead of continuing on little by little by little by little. And I also feel like that's about money saving too. That could be applied to so many different things.
That's such a good point. The familiarity aspect that can be such a barrier for many of us. It might not be that, oh, I would never like it or I couldn't sustain on that. It just might be, I'm not familiar with it. We kind of stick to the things that we know. But oftentimes when we're willing to branch out, try new things step by step, we learn more about ourselves and we might be open to things we didn't think we were open to. So I love that point about it. I think applies to a lot of different aspects of life too, not just our diets.
So true. It reminds me of the very first time I went to a vegetarian restaurant. A friend who was vegetarian brought me and said, order anything you want. And I looked at the menu, didn't know of any of the things on there. And I was like, I'll have the white rice. And I literally only ordered white rice because I didn't know anything on there. And for me, becoming plant-based, what really opened my world and my palate up to all of these different international cuisines and different types of ingredients, because I didn't have a lot of courage to venture out before that.
Yeah. It also has this element of like the all or nothingness that we're so used to. It's either I'm all plant-based or I'm all nothing. Well, all not plant-based, you know?
I eat everything. Yeah.
It's that identity thing. And I think your journey to like over 6 years to slowly become fully plant-based, that gives permission to a lot of people. Like, I'm not a vegetarian anymore, but I eat like probably 2 or 3 plant-based meals a week. So that doesn't make, you wouldn't think like I don't identify as that anymore, but it doesn't mean I can't incorporate it into my life.
Exactly. And in fact, I've surveyed my audience, and about 65% of people who are part of my community eat everything, but want to incorporate more plant-based dishes. They realize that it's healthier for you to have very vegetable heavy, fruit heavy meals in your life and want that for their families.
Could we take a moment just to define some of these different words? I know that like we use vegetarian or plant-based but I know that there's differences between all of these things and some overlap as well. When you talk plant-based, Toni, what does that primarily mean for you? Or maybe what's the spectrum that you've seen?
This is a really, really heated subject for many, but for me, it's not. You can really, if I don't ever judge anybody. So if you want to call yourself vegetarian like I did and pick the pepperoni off of your pepperoni pizza and just not eat that part, like you do you. That's how I started. And so vegetarian is not eating meat. And there are some ingredients that other vegetarians don't eat as well, but they tend to eat eggs and cheese and other dairy products. And then there's vegan. Vegans often are a little bit more on the ethical side, but there are other vegans who are not, and they just want to eat less animal products or no animal products. But that tends to be more of a lifestyle. So no leather, no fur. They try to buy cruelty-free products, not tested on animals. And so it's more of a lifestyle. And then plant-based, this is the one that's a little bit tricky. I know people who are plant-based and are diehard plant-based, but they still eat meat sometimes. There are people who are plant-based who they believe that they don't eat oil. I believe oil came from plants, and I use plant-based synonymous to vegan. So there's like a whole spectrum of just the word plant-based. And I feel like if you want to eat more plants and you feel comfortable labeling yourself plant-based, you do you.
That's amazing. If we just want to stick to the basics of plant-based, meaning plants, then that's great.
Yeah, that's how I feel. That's how I feel. I eat food that was made from plants. And that is a very, very vast range of food.
Yeah. So for someone hearing this and realizing, great, I can intersect with this concept, this way of eating and living on a variety of ways, what would you say is the easiest way for someone to get started if they're also considering their budget?
I know that Jen has a lot of thoughts about this with meal planning, because that's always where I start. I feel like having a plan with saving money, period, is going to get you far, and really taking stock of what's in your pantry so that you're not buying ingredients that you don't need, and not finding recipes that are online that require a whole new list of ingredients that you have to spend money on and maybe don't go together. So you can't use the celery that you have left over in your soup because now you're making a pasta and pasta doesn't have that celery. So being a little bit thoughtful and smart about your planning, and then using that planning at the grocery store, because the grocery store is like a very hard place to navigate when you're on a budget.
Yes.
I know. Yeah. The marketing is so fantastic. They've got colors and beautiful signage. And what we don't know as consumers often is that there is a lot of paid placement at the grocery store. So when you go in and you see this big like sale sign, tomato sauce is $1, you're thinking, oh, great. I needed tomato sauce. But often that's not the cheapest, and it's better for you to avoid that intro section and then also the end caps and go straight to the aisle, look for your tomato sauce. Don't even look just in your line of sight. Look all the way around, because that could be paid placement too, and look for the cheapest by price per ounce. So often that's private label, but still do your diligence and make sure that's the cheapest. And there are so many hacks like that when you're at the grocery store, just shopping smartly, making sure that you've eaten before you've gone so that you don't purchase impulsively. Make sure you have a plan so that you're not randomly grabbing ingredients because they're on sale or because they look good or because you just want to try them, and stick to the plan.
Yeah, it seems like such a misconception that going plant-based would be more expensive, when the reality is that meat is what usually costs us a lot of money. Although I know, even for myself, if we're starting to talk about cutting dairy, then there's a lot of other alternatives. And sometimes I see that those alternatives to whatever recipes are going to call for that might have dairy in it, the alternatives might be more expensive. And so I'm curious your thoughts on how to begin. Like if someone were at that end of the spectrum with, I also want to cut out like the dairy and the cheeses and the eggs and all of that, and yet trying to find some reasonable alternatives, how might they go about, planning for that well and wisely within their money?
I've found that sticking to plants, like whole foods, is going to be the cheapest option. And you can still have a very delicious and familiar experience with tastes and textures with your seasonings. And one thing that I go back to all the time, because I come from a family of meat lovers and I don't eat meat, but I've also been on a budget for my whole adult life. I lived under the poverty line until maybe in the past 4 years. And so I was on a tight budget. And one meal that I kept going back to are lentil tacos. Lentil tacos are my favorite. You use all the same thing. You wouldn't put cheese on it, but it's still delicious. And you would cook the lentils instead of the beef, and you'd flavor them the same. You'd use, I use a taco seasoning packet, but if you use if you make your own blend, that's fine too, with some onion, lettuce, tomato, and corn tortillas. Oh my gosh, delicious. My meat loving family loves it. So it doesn't have to be a sacrifice. And also, if you give food a try without the alternatives, because those can get pricey, you'll find that with the right seasonings, it's so filled with flavor and it's healthier for you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we're all about values-based budgeting and spending anyway. So if this is a decision that we want to make with the way that we're feeding ourselves and interacting with the world, then we can find room to do that and cut in other places as well. But also it's like anything else, like going minimal or you name it, where there's a way to do it expensive and there's a way to do it within our means. And both can be really amazing and really great and really tasty. I find that people who like are primarily plant-based eat that way. They make incredible food. I think maybe because like there's more time and not a ton of extra time and effort, but like you care more about like the main, if the main dish
spices,
is the veggie.
Jill.
Yeah.
We just actually use spices.
Whereas like if you're cooking meat all the time, I feel like you don't have to do that, but then you never get really good at cooking.
Yeah.
That's so true. When I first started my cooking journey, did not know how to mix the different spices and blend different ingredients. And I grew up, I had two phases of my life. I was brought into this world by teenage parents, but my dad went into the Navy full time right after he found out that I was going to be born. And I lived with my grandparents during that time. They were retired and they both were very interested in food. My grandpa was a Japanese gardener here in the Central Valley and Central Valley of California. And my grandma was a Mexican woman who took his food and made us delicious meals from scratch. And so they were very rich in plants and fresh foods. But then I went and moved in with my dad and we ate like bachelors. So I moved in with him when I was 11 years old and I loved hamburger helper. I loved hot dogs with chili. I loved top ramen, mac and cheese, you name it. We ate like bachelors. That's just how it went. Yes. And so I didn't develop the cooking skills because I was too young when I was living with my grandma, and I relied heavily on packaged foods. And so going into learning how to cook vegetarian and then plant-based later on, I had to experiment. And what I did was I would go to the library and check out books. And I would invite a few friends over we called it Womanly Wednesdays, and we would watch a rom-com and make food together where we all brought different ingredients because we were all very budget conscious and trying to save money and didn't have a lot of money. So we would cook together and make these huge meals where maybe it would be like a big pot of vegetable soup with a loaf of bread and a salad. And everybody brought certain ingredients and we shared the cost, shared the food, and also had a meaningful time together. So it was a really beautiful experience, but it allowed me to play with things in recipes, like ingredients in recipes that may be too expensive. So if kale was called for, but spinach was what I had on hand already, I would say, hope this works and give it a try. And so that's really how it happened.
That's what I do all the time.
Yes. And in Plant-Based on a Budget, Quick and Easy, my new cookbook, I actually have lines in every recipe that just say my tips. And they're for the reader to customize each of the recipes based on their own preference, because that's how I cook. I take something as a guide and I change it up based on my family's preferences, based on what I have on hand. And I'll say things like, well, that didn't work. Try to swap this out. Or it did work.
Yes.
I love the tip of doing this with a community, exploring something, especially going back to what you said at the beginning about familiarity being a barrier sometimes to trying new things or exploring a different way of life or eating. But then when we bring other people into it and we can do it together, you've got that element of familiarity. And then also just like sharing the cost together and having fun cooking together, probably learning new skills, trying new things. Like there's so much that I love about your Womanly Wednesdays. It doesn't have to be called that, but it's so amazing.
And there are a lot of other ways to do this too, like food sharing. I love food sharing. That is my love language. I want to feed you and I want to celebrate your birthday by making you a big cake. So that is how I express love. And there are a lot of ways to save money and time in the kitchen by using those practices, whether you're cooking together and making a big, giant batch of food and having your friends bring their Tupperware so that they can take them home for leftovers and you can have leftovers. Or another thing that I've done in the past is if I'm making a dish for dinner, maybe I'll ask my coworker to also make a double batch for dinner and we can swap the other one. So if I'm making 2 casseroles and you're making 2 casseroles that are both different, you can swap the next day so that you're not having to make 2 separate dishes, buy 2 separate recipe ingredients, yet you still share food and cut back on the labor and time in the kitchen.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We get a lot of our single listeners asking like, how do I meal plan and make like this full recipe? And then I don't want to eat it for the next 5 days.
Oh.
What a great idea. And like just emphasizing further the value of community and doing this thing in community to be able to like, hey, I'm just going to cut it in half and then we can like swap. Like,
yes. I also have a tip for the single listener and maybe the single listener who's an introvert and doesn't have or maybe want a big community. So I actually have had that experience 100 million times where I've made a big pot and then I hated it 5 days later. And one thing that I've really loved doing, and I include some notes on this in my book too, are if I make a big batch of chili or soup, I'll take split pea soup, for example. I will make it very plain the first day. It'll be very plain. And then the next day, I will take a ladle and I'll spice it differently with nutritional yeast. And now it's got a cheesy flavor. The next day, I'll take another ladle and I'll put some hickory smoke in there. And it's going to have a smoky flavor now. The next day, I'll take another ladle and I'll put lemon juice and some sriracha and maybe some pepper. And now it's got a tangy, spicy taste. And so you can put in the effort, make a pretty plain dish, and change up the flavors every day so that you really have a slightly different experience and not hate it a week later.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you make a bunch and you put some in the freezer, which is still a really great tip. We love the freezer, but you're blowing my mind right now. I'm taking it to the next level.
I think you've just done you have beautifully emphasized how eating more plant-based does not have to be more expensive, that there are tons of ways that it can save you money. I feel like in the times where I've seen people spend a lot on it, it's like the times where they're trying to replace like product for product. So like doing the plant-based pizza, buying the ready-made frozen one. It's like obviously going to be more expensive. But also I think I have been guilty of this in my early days of doing like procrasti-spending. So like instead of
Did you come up with that?
Yes, I did.
Oh, Jen.
And it was inspired by a friend of mine who like wanted to get back into running, and so he bought new running shoes, new running shirts, shorts, everything, and then never got back into running. But he thought he was doing something because he was spending money on the thing. And that is the same with like going vegan or vegetarian is, okay, I'm going to buy all of these foods that are vegan and vegetarian and totally do an overhaul of my kitchen and get ready. And then never follow through. But they feel like they've done something because they've spent money on it. And I have done this before. And that's where we find ourselves thinking, oh, this is too expensive. But the reality is that in going small and doing these just small common sense things, like, oh, it saves you so much money.
I love what you just said because it reminds me of a book that I read quite some time ago called Born to Run. And it was pretty much the same thing. Stop buying fitness gear. Get into running first. Yeah. Try it out. See if you like it. And then maybe 50 miles, 100 miles after of running later, get new shoes. First, then put in another 50 miles or 100 miles, then get new pants. Like it doesn't does it have to come before the actual doing of the thing?
Mhm.
And so that's such a good comparison.
Yeah, try the lentils, try the black beans
Yes.
before the tempeh and the tofu
Yes.
and the seitan.
Yeah.
Start small and not all at the same time. Like one
Yes.
plant-based meal.
Also, start and then keep trying, because I hated brown rice. I had never had brown rice before, and I did not like it till like the 10th try. So sometimes you have to try it like 10 times and then you might like it.
They do say that. I think the research, I'm using air quotes, is you have to try something 11 times before you acquire a taste for it if it's a new thing.
Also, it takes you like 10
wow.
times to figure out how to make brown rice, I think. Like 10 times of making it to start making it right. I make it like pasta now. So I'll just put a lot of water in and then drain it at the end.
Strain it.
Then you never run out of water. You never worry about it being too dry.
Wow.
So that's my brown rice tip.
Okay. Wow.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing. And of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/strategic. That's oracle.com/strategic. oracle.com/strategic.
Discover the heartwarming and hilarious world of sibling connections on Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson.
You might be asking yourself, what is sibling revelry?
Yeah, well, we just made it up.
They'll have some laughs and maybe inspire some people along the way with universal tales of what it's like to grow up with brothers and sisters.
We're full-blood siblings, the only full-blood sibling.
In our family. Well, not in the world. I mean...
No, in the whole world. That's just it. Like, no one...
Dive into family tales and explore the human mind with guests like Joel and Benji Madden.
And it's fun because we've decided to open it up, to really like all kinds of different siblings. And it's going to be an awesome season.
It's more than a podcast. It's a celebration of the ties that bind us. Listen to Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
So let's talk a little bit about the time involved with plant-based, because especially if we're following these tips for the less expensive foods that are not the prepackaged, that are not like necessarily the pre-prepared, like how can we cut the time cost of going plant-based? Or do you even find that it costs more time?
It can. When I started plant-based on a budget, I had very little money. I was negative a lot of money. And then the cash I had in my life was very little. And so I made a lot of the food that I ate from scratch. I made my bread. I made my pasta sauces. And I really, if I wanted to eat that way, because I had more time at that point in my life than I had money, I made it work. But now I have more disposable income than I do time. I feel like I'm super strapped for time, and I splurge now on a can of beans instead of making my beans from scratch. Not 100% of the time, but that's a good example of what I would splurge on now, even though it's so much more economical to make them yourself, and they taste better. So I will say you can spend a lot of time, but some of the ways to avoid that are thinking simply. It doesn't have to be an elaborate meal. You can make maybe a pot of brown rice for the week and throw things together like a hummus wrap or a burrito with a can of beans and your rice and some tomatoes and some lettuce and salsa. And that's your lunch for the week. Or put some hummus and vegetables. So that's something that's quick and easy. Pasta with frozen veggies, a can of cannellini beans, and red sauce. Also very quick, easy, familiar. It doesn't take more than 15 minutes to throw any of those meals together. So that's when I am on the go. I tend to, or trying to get out of the kitchen as quickly as possible. Those are the meals that I rely on. But the style of eating that I do at home the most is cooking a legume and a grain, and then mix and matching those throughout the week. So I'll throw them in a soup with veggies. I'll throw them in a burrito. I'll do some fried rice with some brown rice and some vegetables. And I use tofu, I use beans, I use lentils, I use split peas, I use different types of lentils, red, brown, green. So there are a lot of protein sources that are very inexpensive, and you can play with those to decide which ones you like better. But I use one of those, a grain, and then either a store-bought sauce or a sauce that I make, plus some vegetables, and I throw them all together and mix and match them throughout the week. That's my style of eating, but there are a lot of others. You can do the one pot thing that I mentioned earlier with the soup or a chili and change it up. You can do the freezer-friendly meals that you mentioned earlier, and there's a way of meal prepping for everybody.
Again, it sounds like a spectrum of however you want to intersect. You can find a way that doesn't take a lot of time, and you can find a way that takes a ton of time. And I also like how you're giving yourself permission to trade off time and money. Sometimes we don't have a surplus of both. Sometimes we have a surplus of neither. But sometimes you've got more than one than the other. And so figuring out what kind of trade-off works for us.
Yep.
Maybe we've got a little bit more money than time, so I'm willing to pay for convenience, or I've got more time than money, so I'm going to do a lot of the things myself. And that's just a really helpful kind of foundational concept here.
I love that you said that, because it also puts your head into thinking what actually costs more. And if you value your time at a certain amount, and then you look at the thing, we'll say beans or pizza dough is $2 at Trader Joe's, and I can put together 2 personal pizzas with that, versus it will take me about an hour to make pizza dough if I do it from scratch and I let it rest. What am I valuing my time at? And making those decisions based on what's going to actually cost you more.
Yeah. Speaking of a spectrum and making decisions, I resonated a lot with you when you were describing like growing up and the difference between being with your grandparents and then being with your dad, and kind of what the eating landscape looked like. And I think you're describing a lot of people's households now, when you've got maybe one spouse who wants to eat one way and another partner who wants to eat a different way. And I can kind of relate just personally with the way that my husband enjoys eating. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I am down for like a good mac and cheese. But there are times when I'll go a little bit more healthy, plant-based, and sometimes he's on board, sometimes he's not. So like for someone like me or anyone else who can relate to that situation, do you have any advice for maybe one person wants to go plant-based, but the partner loves meat or loves bachelor eating? They just can't get away from their ramen and hot dogs. I do like hot dogs too, though.
I have a different scenario in my house where even though I eat pretty healthy-ish, my husband eats super ultra healthy and doesn't use oil and doesn't like salt and all the things I think are tasty. And so the way I get around that is I make a way that I think you can do this if your partner wants to eat meat or cheese, is make a meal that is pretty plain again. And then I take we'll say pasta and sauce. And in mine, I can really flavor it up with what I want. I can saute my own veggies if I want. But in his, I've used the same pasta and the same sauce, and he can be responsible for what goes in that. I can put some vegan cheese if I wanted that. I can put in, you name it, whatever he doesn't like. That's what I can do. I hate mushrooms. I know I'm the worst vegetarian, but in his, he loads his up with mushrooms. He'll put nutritional yeast for that cheesy flavor. And I don't want that pasta. So you can make a same base and then take it and create your own preferences.
Yeah.
Using that base.
Negotiation station. I love that your tip isn't here's just how to manipulate them into your way of thinking and doing, but here's a way that you both can get what you want and need and value, and there's space for that. Yes. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I have been vegan for 16 years now, and if there's one thing I've learned is that you cannot force anyone to do anything. You can only be kind and loving and hope that they will support you and accommodate you. And I have found that approach. My friends want to make sure that I'm included. So often they'll look for a vegetarian restaurant, or they'll make mostly everything, all of the sides at Thanksgiving vegan, except the protein on the table, so that I can enjoy all of them. So that has been my experience, and I've tried a lot of different approaches. That's the one that works. It's really hard to try to push someone into something that they don't want to do, and they can resent you. They can make life harder for you. But if you just say, this is what I'm doing. If you want to change yours up, I'll give you the meal before I dress mine in the way that I want to.
Yeah. We had a similar experience because I was a vegetarian when I met my husband. And for the first, I guess, 5-6 years of our relationship, until I got pregnant and I craved a Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich. And that was it. And I would cook only vegetarian, and he never stopped eating meat. Like, he would eat it if he went out somewhere, but I wouldn't buy it. If it was in the house, he bought it, and or it was leftovers. And he was I'm very lucky in that he was very, okay with that happening. He's like, I wouldn't eat healthy on my own. So this is kind of like the only way I would eat healthy. And sometimes he says he misses it. And then other times he says, I'm glad you cook meat. So I don't know. But I do cook half vegan or vegetarian meals every week. So, but yeah, I think really, if he wanted meat, he was on his own. And it's not like I was like, oh, meat can't be in my house. But yeah, I wasn't going to cook it.
That's how my best friend from childhood, she told her husband, this is what I'm making. And if you want to do your meat, if you want to cook your chicken, you can do that and add it to the meal that I make if you really want to. And he was gung-ho about it for 5 seconds, and then realized how much effort it was to put in the time to one. He bought this big giant Costco pack of chicken, and he was like, I'm never going to eat this if you're not eating it. It's taking up so much space. So he was thinking, gosh, I wish I didn't buy that big thing, because now I don't want to do it. He did the runner thing. He bought the product before he realized he did not want to cook.
Before he gave it a chance. Yep. Procrastinating.
Do you know what? We always give a chance, and it hits all ends of the spectrum.
Never procrastinate this one.
The Bill of the Week.
Right. It's time for the best minute of your entire week. Maybe a baby was born and his name is William. Maybe you paid off your mortgage. Maybe your car died and you're happy to not have to pay that bill anymore. Duck bills, Buffalo Bills, Bill Clinton. This is the Bill of the Week.
Toni, every week we invite our listeners and our guests to share with us a bill that they love, hate, lost, gained, whatever. It's vague for a reason. A person named Bill. Toni, we would love to hear yours.
I very, very rarely go to Starbucks, but I went there and someone before me paid for my bill. And I knew that that was a thing that happens to other people. And it's like something you hear exists, but not to me. And I almost hugged that person. We weren't like post-COVID times and people were a little bit weird about hugging. Like, stay away from me. I couldn't believe it. It was so nice. And it made me want to be in a place where I could do that too.
Aw, that's so
cool.
sweet.
What did you end up getting?
I got a hot chocolate with soy milk.
Yum.
I don't know why that sounds like so adorable to me. I don't think I've heard like a grown adult talk about getting hot chocolate in so long, and it's so endearing.
Yes.
It was delicious.
Yes.
I bet.
And especially with soy milk, because I still order soy milk at Starbucks. I know it's like not in anymmer, but
It's not in.
I know.
It's not on
I know.
trend anymore.
It's not.
I'm old school about it too. I like my soy milk.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, that's
well, I'm not a
great.
big Starbucks fan, so that'd be the only way to get me there is if someone else bought mine. So I'm here for it. I'm here for that bill, just in a different perspective. Oh, man. If anyone listening has a bill where someone else maybe paid for you, bought you your hot
Maybe your
chocolate.
barista's name
or
was
your
Bill.
Chocolate milk. Or your barista's name was Bill. You know we're here for the people named Bill. We don't get enough of them. Visit frugalfriendspodcast.com/bill. Be a bill or leave a bill.
The choice is yours.
Discover the heartwarming and hilarious world of sibling connections on Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson.
You might be asking yourself, what is sibling revelry?
Yeah, well, we just made it up.
They'll have some laughs and maybe inspire some people along the way with universal tales of what it's like to grow up with brothers and sisters.
We're full-blood siblings, the only full-blood sibling.
In our family. Well, not in the world. I mean,
No, in the whole world. That's just it. Like, no one...
Dive into family tales and explore the human mind with guests like Joel and Benji Madden.
And it's fun because we've decided to open it up, to really like all kinds of different siblings. And it's going to be an awesome season.
It's more than a podcast. It's a celebration of the ties that bind us. Listen to Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
From the studio who brought you the #1 podcast, The Piketon Massacre, this is Murder 101.
A group of high school students started a project to research a string of unsolved murders.
Those murders happened in the mid-1980s.
He's out there doing stuff. He just didn't stop.
Everything that the students predicted through their profile turned out to be accurate.
Redhead killer profile. Male, Caucasian, 5'9" to 6'2", 180 to 270 pounds. Unstable home, absent father and a domineering mother. Right-handed, IQ above 100, most likely heterosexual.
There is no profile of this killer except for the ones the students created.
Just because some of these women no longer have people to speak for them does not mean that they deserve to not be spoken for.
What if this guy's still alive? Like, what if he comes after us?
I said, are you going to kill me? And he said, yes.
Listen to Murder 101 on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And now it's time for the lightning round.
Pew, pew. Pew, pew. All right. For this week's lightning round, we will all take turns answering this question.
Toni already answered this like a ton of times, but I'm still excited for her answer.
What's your favorite inexpensive plant-based meal to make? Toni?
This is the vulnerability round.
This is her vulnerability round. It gets a little less vulnerable when we have a guest, but
I love soup. Soup is so comforting to me. And some people say that they love soup in soup season, but here in Sacramento, it gets like 110 degrees and I'm still eating soup.
Yes.
I know. I have a soup season. And so there's only a few months a year that I can eat soup.
The closest I get to eating soup is chili. But then I got to have it with rice or something.
But I do
Not
love
a
a
huge
soup.
person.
I love a soup.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your go-to right now?
Right now, I've been loving a super vegetable heavy, but with a clear broth. And I do little tofu cubes so that I can feel like it's chicken noodle like. And I'll put in a pasta or something like that to make it hearty, or white rice. Like a chicken and rice type soup with white rice. That's delicious too.
I love the word hearty. Like if you tack on the term hearty to any meal, I am here for it.
Yes. I love a minestrone. Minestrone, however you say it, with a little shell pasta and veggies. Yes.
What about you, Jen?
Okay, so I don't want to toot my own horn.
Please don't, because that sounds gross.
But I feel like I have perfected 2 things in the kitchen, and only 2 things. I am not a chef. I have perfected the kale salad.
Yeah, you have.
So in salad season, I am making delicious kale salad.
Yeah, you have.
And I will do this like kind of mayonnaise based dressing. I make my own dressings, and you use like a plant-based mayonnaise with oh my gosh, it's just, you use the mayonnaise instead of oil, and then like an apple cider vinegar and other stuff, and strawberries and walnuts.
Yum.
Sounds delicious.
Oh yes.
My stomach literally just grumbled. I wish I had my
Yes.
I really grumbled. You might go back and listen to it. You might hear it.
A hearty kale salad.
And it's so much better the next day. You just got to massage it. Count to 60, massage your kale. Or if it's not salad season, I have also perfected crispy tofu, which is hard to do.
Yeah, it is.
So I will put tofu in everything, and even my husband loves it.
Even him?
Yes. So I will mix it. The secret is, and I got this from, I think, Cookie and Kate. The secret is a tablespoon of soy, a tablespoon of oil, and a tablespoon of cornstarch. Just make up that slurry, toss your cubes in, bake.
Yeah.
That is
slurry.
Yeah, cornstarch slurry.
I like that word too.
Yes. You can use like liquid aminos too if you're not on gluten, but like yes, like that is everything. I'll put it in the kale salad. The other day,
she's not with us anymore. Her mind is on food.
I made
right
a warm kale salad with the tofu. And oh my gosh, I put I roasted some butternut squash. It had some quinoa, and some almonds, I think.
Yeah,
maybe pepitas. I don't know.
Wow.
Oh gosh, yes. And so it was warm when I served it, and then next day for leftovers, it was a cold kale salad. So it was like
that's Toni's thing. It's right out of Toni's book.
Yeah. But my husband did call me the next day and was like, "Should I microwave this? It feels weird to microwave a salad." I'm like, no, I mean, it should feel weird.
No,
you shouldn't.
No, you want to know what Jen's real response was? Because she was at my house and I heard her on the phone with her husband. She's like, "These are the kinds of decisions you need to be able to make on your own." I'm like, what was happening? She's like, "Yeah, that was Travis." I'm like, "What?"
I was joking.
Okay, I couldn't tell. I don't know if you could tell.
I was just telling. I was like, dude, you gotta make these decisions for your life. You know, like you gotta know thyself.
Yes. Yep.
For me, it's like a chickpea rice bowl with all sorts of other goodies into it. But I love what can happen with chickpeas with a variety of seasoning, baked. They get just a nice crisp to them. and then other veggies thrown into there, and that's fun for me.
Yeah, I did a chickpea and sweet potato curry last night.
I was just saying,
oh, nice. I just made this recently, and then I saw you that night. We went like midnight bowling, which was fun. And my husband was like, oh no, I'm really hungry. Why am I so hungry? I'm like, well, because normally we're not up at this time and your body's just now like expending energy. But also I did make just a vegetarian meal. He's like, I think because there wasn't any meat in the dinner tonight. And then Jen's sitting there. She's like, no, it's because you didn't put enough protein in your meal. And that was fun. That little exchange.
That was a fun exchange we just recently had.
See, that's what happens, I think, sometimes, is there's like these ideas around what it means to be plant-based.
Yeah,
you're not going to get enough food, but you can. You can get enough food and all your nutrients. You just don't stay up till midnight bowling. That's the trick.
When you said midnight, I was like, ooh.
Yeah, anybody's going to need a snack at midnight. I know. They are. They really are.
And this one's pregnant, so
I know.
She was the real hero.
I spent all day conserving my energy for that outing. It was a special occasion. So, well, Toni, thank you so much for joining us. Please tell everyone where they can find more from you, find your book, etc.
Thank you so much for having me, and I loved our conversation. People can find me at plantbasedonabudget.com. My book is called Plant-Based on a Budget, Quick and Easy, and it's available anywhere you buy books and at plantbasedonabudgetcookbook.com. And I'm on Instagram at plantbasedonabudget.
Amazing. Just everywhere plant-based on a budget.
There you go.
So great.
Yes.
Easy.
Thanks for being with us, Toni.
Thank you. Thank you again.
We hungry now, though.
We are. I had to go get some food before we recorded this outro.
She's not lying.
I'm also super pregnant and I'm always hungry, so there's that.
Anytime we have a guest and I walk away with tips, it's a glorious day. And I feel like win, 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 win. I hope you listening have something to take away, whether you're going to go like all in on all plant-based or you're going to intersect with it and dabble and become familiar. There's tips throughout here. And my biggest takeaway is that community learning piece. I loved that, like trying something new, but with others.
Yeah. I love the permission she gave to start slow.
Yeah.
To go take your time. Start small. 1 meal a week is all it takes. Try it out. Don't procrastinate trying to like change everything at once. Just try it a little bit.
Chances are a lot of us are already eating a few meals that are at least vegetarian.
Yeah, you don't have to identify, like change your identity to do this. You don't have to become any stereotype that you don't want to identify with.
You can find the radical middle even here.
I love that. So thank you so much for listening. Many of you know we have a membership for our listeners who are paying off debt where we do monthly money challenges. We actually just did an eat at home challenge. And we also have got accountability groups, book club, all kinds of stuff. The book clubs episodes you hear on the show, our members will read together in our club, and it's really awesome. So we want to congratulate one of our members for a big win. This one's from Jacqueline, and it says gratitude. She says, I just wanted to share my gratitude for Frugal Friends Club. After receiving blank stares, excuses about their own financial life, outright hostility, or a change of subject from friends, I shared my no spend, move towards debt-free living journey with. She goes, hey, I understand that finances are a loaded subject. I'm not taking it personally. I realized that if I'm going to have community around this, it isn't with the people I currently spend time with. And it may have even been a part of the reason it took me so long to make a move in the direction I wanted to go in. Not that I'm absolving myself from responsibility. I need to do some work on my boundaries as well. I'm so glad you all are here.
praise hands, prayer hands.
Jacqueline, that's legit. And I think so many people's stories and experiences, it's hard to read and hear that you experience so much hostility in some of the ways that you wanted to manage your own personal finances. But there is a reality to others finding a different lifestyle offensive. It could feel like an attack on the way that they are choosing to live. And sometimes that can lead to some hostility, but not allowing that to inhibit you from choosing something that you know is right for yourself and finding the community that's going to support you, even if it's online. And we know that online communities can be of great support. It might not be exactly the same thing as being in person with other people and kind of doing life in that regard, but there is a touch point and connection that is very real, that we can still get what we need from others in relationships through the internet and through clubs like the Frugal Friends Club. So congratulations. I'm so glad that you're there in the club.
Jacqueline, we need people in our immediate, with us physically, but we don't need to get everything from them. If we need something different, you can go seek it somewhere else, and there's no shame in that. I'm so glad you found your place in Frugal Friends Club. So thank you for listening. If you want to check out the membership, if you're experiencing something like that, then head to frugalfriendspodcast.com/club. Check out all the courses, interviews, challenges, all the stuff we've got inside in addition to the community and the accountability groups.
See you next time.
Frugal Friends is produced by Eric Siriani.
I forgot what we were doing for a second. I was thinking about midnight bowling.
I thought about that too. And I'm like, always, we hang out a lot outside of the podcast. And I'm like, I guess we should like post that on social media or something.
Did you take any pictures?
No, not a single
neither.
one.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, then we, have conversations like we did at bowling the other night. I was like, this isn't even suitable for social media.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to tell people what we're talking about.
I guess. We're absolute weirdos. But you are not a nerd, Jill. That's the one distinction we make. Jill is not a nerd. She weird though.
Yeah. I learned that just some of the conversation that we can let our listeners in on was all the salacious content about Miley Cyrus and her recent song.
When you are almost bedridden,
because of
pregnancy, you find a lot of information out that otherwise you would not have cared to know and still don't really care to know.
Yeah.
But you have to make yourself useful in some way.
Yeah.
When you can't be physically useful.
Yeah. And you're useful in getting the celeb goss.
Yes. And I, will definitely do a Wikipedia search of a celebrity for the greater good.
And I appreciate that. And something I learned about you, Jen, is that you bowl your best when you dedicate your frame to One Direction.
So here's the context of that story. This One Direction song comes on
at the bowling alley.
And Jill's like, what happened to One Direction? Are they still a band? And I'm like, I think it's just Harry Styles. I think the rest of them died.
To which I go, really? Because I'm not up on the celeb goss. I'm like, how intense and traumatic is
and I
that?
Just like regaled
that they would all being gone.
I just regaled like everyone with like very specific details about Miley Cyrus's like life.
Yeah.
And so I'm the expert here,
right?
In this scenario. 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. I think you're starting a rumor though now that we're like putting it on air.
No, I was joking. I don't know where One Direction is.
Yeah.
I just see a lot from Harry Styles and
but
I don't know the others.
And had a moment of silence for the other members of One Direction that aren't Harry Styles.
It became my turn and I was like, I want to dedicate this frame, which I learned that's called a frame.
Yeah, not a round.
Not a round.
Frame,
yeah.
Not an inning.
Definitely not that. And I was like, I'd like to dedicate this frame to the fallen members of One Direction. And that was really my best frame.
The best
I almost
bowling.
called it around again.
The best
best
bowling
round.
you did. Yes, Jen. And what was your final score?
I don't know, like 85.
Yay!
Was the best one.
No bumpers, though.
No bumpers. I'm so proud of me. I'd like to thank me.
Yeah, the one time that taking the boundaries away was a good thing.
Jill actually beat all of us. Jill is a professional bowler.
No, I'm not.
Oh my
I
God.
haven't
You did
bowled
like
in, 10
122.
years. Yeah.
I do remember your score because it was higher than all of ours, all the boys, except for Eric.
Yeah. Eric beat me by 2 points.
You guys were the best bowlers.
But again, I'm not a nerd.
She's not a nerd.
But nerds are great. There's nothing wrong with being a nerd. I wish I was a nerd.
She's just extremely talented at nerdy things.
Discover the heartwarming and hilarious world of sibling connections on Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson. Dive into family tales, explore the human mind, and laugh with guests like Joel and Benji Madden. It's more than a podcast, it's a celebration of the ties that bind us.
And it's fun because we've decided to open it up to really like all kinds of different siblings. And it's going to be an awesome season.
Listen to Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Frances Fry.
And I'm Ann Morris.
And we are the hosts of a new TED podcast called Fixable.
We've helped leaders at some of the world's most competitive companies solve all kinds of problems.
On our show, we'll pull back the curtain and give you the type of honest, unfiltered advice we usually reserve for top executives. Give us a call and we'll help you solve the problems you're stuck on. Listen to Fixable on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.